Well, no, it's a shame that the hunters are running away from the debate. I mean, there's two reasons really why the SNP have come to this decision. The first is that we do think there's an implication for Scotland in what's being proposed. One of the ironies is that actually a number of people have commented that the Scottish legislation is slightly weaker than the English legislation. The Scottish government's now said it wants to review that.
Give that then as an example. Just in February, she literally pulled that example out of her.
Nicola Sturgeon said quite candidly today that she's changed her mind, and that's the second. The second reason why we've done this is why she's changed her mind, because we have been inundated with messages and emails and letters from English voters asking the SNP to do something about this.
You've got letters from English voters.
But on page 1 of our manifesto...
Opportunistic, doesn't even begin to describe this hypocrisy. It's unbelievable. You're now saying you're Scottish nationalist MPs and you're allowing the English to tell you what to do.
I just want to go back. Have you been receiving letters from English voters?
Yes, yes.
How many?
Hundreds. I mean,
you have received hundreds of letters?
I personally have received over 650 emails and letters from English voters urging us to take a stance on this. And on page one of our manifesto...
Letters or emails?
Letters and emails. And on page 1 of our manifesto, we said quite clearly that as well as giving Scotland strong representation inside the United Kingdom, we wanted to be part of a progressive alliance in Britain. And this is what we mean by being part of a progressive alliance and standing up for British public opinion and English public opinion.
What do you say to that?
I mean, I admire Tommy, and, you know, he's a man who knows all about performance. But Queen Nicola can sit there. In February, she says she won't make the SNP vote one way. She changes her mind. She issues the order. And Tommy has to not only... She issues the order from Scotland, and Tommy and the SNP MPs in London are in fact just doing what they're told to do by Nicola Sturgeon. Right. And he's sitting here having to come on... And Tommy's a good guy and an honest guy, but he has to come on here and he has to make out that black is white.
He's received 600 letters, he said, from English voters.
Suddenly SNP MPs can be told by a few hundred people who write to them how to vote in the English Parliament. All principle. A week ago, the SNP claimed to be a party of principle. Now that boast lies in tatters. You're clearly a bunch of opportunists, and you're doing so in a way which is not acceptable, which lets down.
Let me just ask you, is this going to set a new precedent now? Could you imagine voting on lots of English-only matters?
No, the party's been absolutely consistent. We've said we'll take each proposal on its merits and we'll decide what to do as we see it. And, you know, that's exactly what the policy is going forward. I mean, Graham can sit here and call me names on late-night television, but it doesn't alter the fact that we look at things on their merits.
So education, for example, you might do that as well, because school meals...
If progressive people write to you about what goes on in English schools, you're going to force that on the English people, no matter how they vote.
No, in usual circumstances, we would look to see whether or not there was a specific implication for the constituents that we represent. But on this occasion, as well as that, we've also decided to be part of a progressive alliance throughout Britain, which stands up for English public opinion, 80% of which doesn't agree with Graham and the Conservative Party.
What's your strategy now? Because you've backed down on EVEL, you've backed down on fox hunting.
And the Human Rights Act.
What do you do now?
We haven't backed down on EVEL. What we have done is listened. And what you get, of course, with a nationalist, Tommy has to do what Nicola says. And whatever you give her, she says it's not enough. If we gave her absolutely everything, they turn around and say it's not enough. So what they've said was they wanted reassurance that on finance matters that Scottish MPs like Tommy would still have a vote. We've put out an update today, even though it was already true, specifically to reassure on that. They said there wasn't enough time to debate. We've added another debate, a day's debate in the autumn. So there's 2 full days, as well as the debate that went on earlier this year. The truth is, there are no implications of any materiality at all for English votes for the people you represent. What Tommy and his colleagues today, following Nicola's orders, have shown is it doesn't matter about the principle. It doesn't matter about representing Scotland.
If the principle is not being a second-tier
to try and tear this country apart. That's what they're
is
about.
that a principle?
Well, Tommy is already, unlike me, I get to vote on what happens in the schools and hospitals in my constituency. Tommy has no such power. It's the devolution settlement has created that discrepancy, and all that the English Votes for English Laws initiative from the government at the moment does is allow a consent motion. And the SNP have tried to make out that it's something else, and it isn't.
We're running out of time.
If we can get beyond the name-calling for a moment, I mean, the fact is that, of course, there are anomalies as a result of the devolution that's happened in the United Kingdom over the last 20 years or so, and it should be rectified. And I have a lot of sympathy with the principle that English people should be able to vote on English-only legislation. But
There's
you
a but.
don't do that.
Go on, quick.
You don't do that with a shabby compromise, which the government's trying to do, where you try and pretend that the English Parliament can be the same thing as the UK Parliament, and you end up with two classes of
MPs. The country
MPs.
apart, and that's
You
all
can't
he
have
cares
second
about.
class MPs in the House of Commons.
Thank you both very much indeed. Thanks for coming in.